Hello, everyone, and welcome to another very special episode. She Scores Bangers is teaming up with the Northern Super League over the next few weeks to bring you exclusive interviews with players and others that are gearing up for their inaugural season, set to kick off on April 16th. The NSL, founded by former Canada International Diana Matheson, is Canada's first ever professional women's soccer league, with 6 clubs based in Halifax, Calgary, Ottawa, Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. You can catch the action on CBC, TSN, and other online streaming platforms. Today's guest has been coined as one of the most promising young Canadians in the game. Out of BC, she had a stellar time at the University of Texas before signing her first professional contract with Koga in Denmark and winning the title in her first season there. By joining AFC Toronto, she became the first active Canada Women's National Team member to make her mark in the NSL. A brick wall when representing her country, she'll do just that for the big city. It's none other than Emma Regan. Emma, it's a pleasure to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
So, kind of a tough question, but I feel like it's only appropriate to start with this. West Coast, Best Coast, or what's the feeling on that?
It is still West Coast, Best Coast, unfortunately, for maybe
Mhm.
some people in Toronto, but I think I'm so excited to be in Toronto and experience everything there. I think it's kind of like bigger and better version maybe of Vancouver. Maybe that's a hot take, but yeah, I think I've always been a player that's been a bit like on the move and having to be away from home, so I'm totally used to that. And I've gotten to explore some really amazing cities. I've gotten to live in Austin, Copenhagen, so it kind of seems like Toronto is the next cool city on the list.
Yeah, sounds like you're a bit of a city girl. You enjoy living in the city-ish
I
areas.
do. I
Well,
do, yeah.
Toronto, there's always plenty of things to do, but Emma, we want to hear a little bit more about your journey. I know you grew up in a pretty sportsy family. Both your parents played different sports when they were in college. Tell me about how you started playing soccer and kind of, the early days of a ball between your feet.
Yeah, I think, as you said, I come from a pretty sports heavy family. And so that was something that me and my 2 younger sisters were involved in from a really young age. I think I started playing maybe when I was 5 or 6. And I was playing a ton of other sports as well. I think that was the cool thing about that kind of time in my life. I was able to experience so many different sports and then kind of like pick which I was going to go do long term. And that just happened to be soccer. But yeah, I played lacrosse, swimming, gymnastics, baseball, basketball, everything. So that was, I think, part of maybe what developed the athletic side a little bit, getting to do all of that different stuff. And yeah, it turns out soccer was kind of the one for me. I met some really good friends that we kind of came up through Burnaby and Vancouver with together. So that was really fun to be a part of that with them and share that with them. Um, and yeah, my dad played soccer, so that was one of the first ones that I got into. Obviously, very popular sport for girls in Canada, and so he was my coach growing up, and kind of still thinks he is. But they were both really supportive, both my parents. So yeah, it kind of was a natural progression into soccer for me.
And when you picked soccer, did you think you can pursue it professionally? And I asked that question because here girls in Canada don't really get to see that opportunity because at the time there's no professional league. And so did you think this was going to be your future job as a kid would think?
That was kind of my pipe dream. I kind of always said that I needed, a backup plan, and that's why going to college and actually getting my degree was really important to me because I knew that maybe professional women's soccer was not going to be a long-term sustainable job. But as I kind of said, growing up, I played a bunch of different sports, and soccer did seem like the one that had somewhat of a pathway to go to university to potentially play professionally. I knew that maybe wasn't going to be in Canada right away, but
Mm.
the NWSL was really big and up and coming, and the women's national team was doing so well that there was more of a swell around soccer. And I was really big into lacrosse too, box lacrosse. And so that was a sport that for girls is basically like non-existent. As soon as you hit out
Mhm.
of high school, really, you can't really go anywhere with that. So I knew that maybe that was not a pathway, but there was a bigger chance of something happening in soccer, and I wanted to play as long as I could. So that's why I stuck with soccer.
And you headed over to the University of Texas. Tell me about your experience over there, other than the weather probably being a little too warm than what you're used
It
to.
was it was very warm, yeah. No, I loved it. I really loved it. I think playing in college is a very unique experience. I kind of felt like my growth as a person and a player, like obviously that's the time in your life you're 18 to 22 and you're really like living away from home for the first time and experiencing a lot of things and you've got a ton on your plate with class and travel and soccer. So I think I did a lot of growing up during that time and it really definitely changed me. I'm a completely different person to when I stepped foot on campus for the first time. But I absolutely loved the experience. Great team atmosphere, great city to live in. Weather was really nice, and then it was really hot. But I mean, that was just kind of a challenge that I took on board, and we all had to kind of struggle through that. But yeah, absolutely loved it. Really, really loved my time at the University of Texas.
I think it from the way we got to watch you play, you could tell you did enjoy your soccer over there, and you almost rode this wave of really good momentum over there. And when you looked at wrapping up your obviously collegiate soccer and you looked at different opportunities, tell me about the process of like what was the next step, playing home, kind of like just connecting with friends that you played with before you went over to Texas and just kind of managing that entire idea of signing a professional contract, but you just weren't too sure how to do that.
Yeah, it's very difficult process. There's no rule book. There's no kind of easy thing to follow, especially as a Canadian. I think sometimes the Americans were more set on, I want to play in the US and the NWSL and try to make that happen. And now with the USL, I think that's a great opportunity for them to be able to play at home and more of them to be able to do that. But since Canada didn't have a league and at the time the NWSL wasn't really, I didn't get drafted. I wasn't really thinking that that would be a big reality for me. I was super, super excited to be able to go play in Europe. I thought that was the coolest thing to go live in another country. You're basically getting paid to be over there and like travel and like experience a new city and all of that while still being able to play and having that be your full-time job. So I was like more than ready to go and do that challenge. So it kind of was a weird connection. I think a lot of people find this when they're trying to go pro. It's kind of who you know, or maybe an old coach or somebody that's put you forward. So I think through some old national team connections, the coach of the team that I ended up going to in Denmark knew someone. And so I was kind of connected with their coaches in recruiting. And I had one Zoom call with them, and I was kind of like, yeah, seems good. And kind of ended up over there about 2 weeks later. So it's kind of a crazy whirlwind process. You don't really have anything going on, and then all of a sudden a team's interested and you're packing your whole life up. So yeah, it worked out. I hit the jackpot.
So tell me a little bit about Denmark, kind of arriving there, signing your first professional contract. What was life of adapting into a fully professional career now?
Yeah, I think, like I said, there's a lot of challenges in college. You've got to balance this whole team and life in soccer, but then you have school and all of that. And so I think that's a bit of a balancing act that we all had to go through. And hopefully, to the best of our abilities, we're able to do well in both. But when you're a professional, like your life is just soccer. And so getting to focus on that as the one and only thing in my life was really helpful. I thought that sometimes your downtime and you're like, okay, maybe too much downtime, especially when you're away from home. But I thought that it was a great opportunity to kind of go into everything and say, I'm going to do absolutely everything I can off the field, everything I can on the field, and put my whole 110% of my energy into that one thing and a goal of maybe being back on the national team or whatever it was. So it was definitely a transition, but I think college kind of prepared me for, the workload and everything you had to do. Being a professional was no sweat after that.
And how would you describe kind of how your soccer developed or changed or improved? Because I think the more and more we got to see you play, the sharpened, almost the toolbox got sharpened a little bit more. So can you describe that kind of from your perspective and how you were able to elevate your game in Denmark?
Yeah, for sure. I think I kind of went through a bunch of different positions in college and settled back by the end into the midfield, which is where I love to be. That's my favorite position. So being in Denmark, I was, playing just dedicated as a midfielder and they kind of needed me in maybe a bit more of an attacking area at some points, which was something a little bit new to me or something that I hadn't done in a really long time. So I think, as you said, building that toolbox and knowing that I will always have that sort of defensive element to my game, but that I'm, more than capable of going forward and being a part of the attack and scoring and developing my shot and things like that. So I think that was a big part of it was pushing myself into the midfield and even higher on the field than I had ever really been.
Mhm.
So that was really fun, and I thought a good challenge for me. And then I just think the style in Europe is really suited to me. I really love the possession based, and from the first practice, it was like, okay, we're in the possession and you're in the middle and you've got people around you, and that was a really good challenge for me. And I think it hopefully, as you said, yeah, sharpened me up a little bit, and that's kind of how I want to play and what I want to do going forward. So it was a really good, I think, development of my skill set in the middle.
Mhm. AFC Toronto reach out. There's a little bit of interest. How did that materialize and how did this excitement come together?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they reached out and I kind of wasn't, it was still early and I wasn't really even thinking that far down the road. I knew my contract was going to be up, but I didn't know what I was going to do yet. So yeah, they reached out and I had a call with staff and with the coaches, and I really bought into the vision right away. I think their philosophy and the values of the club were exactly what I needed. I wanted like a very professional environment. Playing in Canada was amazing, obviously, big bonus for me. Um, and yeah, the style that they kind of showed to me was very clear right from the beginning, and they had a plan and they had their coach in place and they had a very clear path forward, which I really liked. I think being able to be in a professional environment before, I was really, really ready for that again and even a step up. And so what they brought to the table from the get-go was really promising, and I kind of bought in right away.
Hmm. Well, tell us a little bit about kind of that philosophy and what we're expected to see from AFC Toronto on the pitch. I know it's still very early days and we're still yet to take on the pitch for that first ever game. But what are fans expected to see? How, I mean, tell us even a little bit about the position that we're expected to see you kind of dominate and try to enjoy on the pitch.
Yeah, I think the philosophy is very attacking minded, very fluid, which I really like. I think that's maybe can be one of the strengths of my game is reading the game, and I don't want to make it easy for defenders to be on me. I want to always be moving. I want to be rotating with people. That's like the best thing ever when you're in the midfield and they just stay in their positions. It's like, okay, easy days, but I think we want to have players that are really dynamic and able to play different positions and give the opponent some different pictures and different challenges. So that was really exciting to me. That's exactly what I want to play. And yeah, I think hopefully we'll be a team that can really implement that style of play, and I can be in the midfield and we can be working off each other, and I can help my teammates, they can help me. I think that kind of defensive midfielder that can also go forward is kind of maybe my sweet spot. So in the eight in there, like I'm never going to shy away from a tackle, and I'm, going to be sprinting back on defense. But I think being able to spring the attack and be a facilitator of play and go forward and help out my forwards is going to be hopefully what I can bring to the team.
How about your teammates? There is a teammate that you are reconnecting with, of Kayla Hansen. You two grew up in Burnaby. You're very familiar with each other. You've played soccer together at the youth level. Tell me about this full circle moment of now playing in Toronto.
Yeah, it was definitely full circle. I think we kind of didn't realize each other were initially speaking to Toronto. And then when we did, it was kind of like, okay, are we both thinking about this? And yeah, I mean, I love Kayla. As you said, we played together for a really long time growing up. We live very close to each other. We were just training out there today, this morning. So, yeah, it's really nice to have people that you know when you're going into a new team, especially this team where it's, completely from scratch, and there's a bit of a comfortability factor there, which is nice. But I think both of us know that, regardless, we're going to be able to do the job. Kayla was playing in Europe as well, so she's kind of been experienced to that, and she has her own experiences that she's bringing. Um, yeah, and I'm just excited to get to play with her. She's an amazing player, very aggressive, very good on defense, very dynamic player. So I think I'm very happy that she's going to be on my side of the ball.
I think that's the beauty of the NSL now. We're going to see a lot of former friends and former teammates get to connect on the pitch, perhaps sometimes on the opposition. But you're going to be part
Yeah.
of history with the NSL, of Canada's first ever professional league. April's going to be monumental in the history that it holds. Tell me about how it feels to be kind of this Canadian player that will represent so much of Canadian women's soccer now, come April and onwards.
Yeah, I think it's a really special time for, women's sports in general in Canada. I was down in Vancouver watching the PWHL women when they had their takeover tour out here, and just the energy and all the little girls coming to the game, just so excited with their signs and their jerseys. Like that was just so amazing to see. And I hope that we can create a similar environment in the NSL and have that kind of inspiration factor, because that was a huge part of why I, wanted to play soccer, continued to play soccer, thought that, this could be a reality for me one day, was seeing the women's national team, win the bronze medal in 2012. And that was like all my friends, we were like, okay, like maybe this could be something for us as Canadians that we had never really had before. So I think it's a great opportunity. I think we all kind of understand the gravity of that, and, that we are role models for the next generation. And I really hope that we can represent soccer in Canada as well as the generation that's come before us.
You're representing soccer in Canada. You're also representing the Canadian national team. You have done so at multiple different levels, especially at the youth stage. You first put on that Canadian jersey when you were 15, so very, very young. Tell me about the experience of being in that international system and just kind of growing up through it, taking a little bit of a break, and then kind of coming back for it now. Because also, I must mention your signing and joining of the league. You were the first ever player within that pool to make move into the NSL.
Yeah, I think growing up through the national team was a very cool experience. I, met some really great players that I still know to this day that are, on the senior team and that I get to see when I'm in camp. Yeah, I think it is a lot. You're young when you're starting that. Like you said, I was 15, and I think I'm a completely different player. I'm playing a completely different position. And I think part of my kind of growth from that 15-year-old to now is that I understand that, soccer is an amazing part of my life, but it's not absolutely everything. And if I, you know, don't make the next camp, don't make the next team, the world goes on and I'm going to live and I'll be okay. I think as young 15-year-olds, we put so much pressure on ourselves to make the next camp and to do well and to perform. And, if you didn't make one camp, it was like, okay, I'm done. I'm never going to, get to the senior team, but that's not the reality. That's not how it works. So I think I had to learn that along the way. I was very involved in national team stuff. And, as I was a youth player, U15, U17, U20. And then once you kind of get there, Canada, we don't have a U23 team. So you're either kind of on the senior team or you're not. And yeah, I had been called in a little bit, but I don't think that that was, my best showing. I don't think I necessarily um, represented myself how I wanted to. And I
Mhm.
took that pretty hard at the time. And then I kind of had to step back and say, it's okay. I'm going to keep playing in college. I'm going to do my thing professionally. Whatever happens, happens. I'm just going to control what I can control, work hard, see where it takes me. And, lo and behold, I'm a year into my professional, career, and the national team becomes a reality again. So, I think that was a big lesson, a big learning. I hope that, young girls that are coming through the system now can kind of understand that it's not the end of the world if you don't make the next camp. There's always more. There's always people coming in and out and new opportunities down the road. So yeah, that was a big journey for me, and I'm happy with where I'm now and the trajectory that I'm on. And yeah, I'm just excited for the next, and whatever happens, happens. Hopefully I can be involved and make a push for, an Olympics, a World Cup. But yeah, I'm just working on the day to day as hard as I can be in Toronto and see where it takes me.
I think managing kind of disappointment and looking ahead for an opportunity is really important. And that's a very important message, I think, for girls in Canada now, because everybody's going to want to become professional soccer players, which is fantastic because it's a reality now. But I think there also needs to be some management of sometimes it's an up and down journey, and there's opportunities that come and go. Emma, I wanted to ask you a fun question because we've been asking the last question to be a fun question here on the series. If you were to build an AFC Toronto player or a teammate from three Canadian international teammates that you've played with, kind of like the full, perfect, complete player teammate, who are the
Oh,
three that
wow.
you'd like to
Okay.
combine together?
Um, oh, okay. I would say I'd go Vanessa's defensive and aerial abilities.
Hmm.
Um, Julia Grosso's dribbling and Jesse's passing.
That's a wicked player.
Hopefully that's that all makes sense. Yeah.
It does make sense. I feel like in my head, if you are to build a player with all these qualities, that'd be pretty difficult to beat, but very fun to play with.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That would be the ideal teammate at Toronto.
That's the ideal teammate. Emma, thank you so much for joining me today. West Coast, Best Coast, that remains the statement. Maybe we'll check on that again, but I really appreciate you joining me here today, and I look forward to seeing you kick it off with AFC Toronto here in the NSL.
Thank you so much for having me.